The starting point that we have is really SharePoint Online and Office 365. Many of our clients spent a lot of time storing their proposal and their sales content in a range of content sources, and this made it very complex for people to find the best content that they needed for the sales documents that they were producing. And we found it best to consolidate all of that content into one centralized source, and in this particular case that was SharePoint Online. So in this particular example, it's a law firm here, Glover Smith & Webb, which really mimics a number of our law firm clients around the world. And these law firm clients have taken the time to take all of their content and really consolidate that content into one centralized source so that they can access that content really easily and find that quite simply. If you just have a look at some of the content sources that we've got here, or some of the items of content, you'll see we've got content stored in these standard SharePoint libraries here that relate to a number of scenarios. We've got attorney biographies stored in here. We've got those biographies indexed by the industry, the practice area, the locations that they may be in. We may store in the SharePoint library as well things like experience or case studies, as you may know them, so that we can easily access those through certain filters directly inside of SharePoint. And then we also have additional information. This is a law firm, so firm overview is important, practice areas are important as well. The key thing about this is that everything is centrally located in SharePoint Online, and so it's really easy for everybody to get to that through a web interface if they want to interact with that. But what we've done is we've layered on top of that capability to access that same content directly from Microsoft Office. And so for salespeople that are used to using tools like Outlook or Word or PowerPoint, they can get to that content in the places that they work directly. And so if you look at this particular screen here, you'll see that we're about to compose a new email. And through this panel on the right-hand side here, we're able to access those SharePoint libraries and documents that exist there. And the libraries actually correlate directly to what we have there in SharePoint. So for this fictitious law firm, let's start with a scenario where we assume that somebody wants to create a proposal and get that out to one of their prospective clients here. So to do that, what we would be able to access is some of those files in SharePoint. And for expediency, I've pinned all of my templates into this panel on the right-hand side. And in particular, this pitch proposal auto template is the one that I want to use here to build a brand new proposal that would go out to my client using the content that's there in SharePoint. So I go to my pinned documents and I access this create button here. Now what that create button is doing is it's having a look through that pitch proposal template there and identifying any fields that might exist in that template. And it's picked up that we need to enter the client name, the date, we need to make a decision about whether we're going to show the firm history or the firm's offices in this proposal, and then we want to make sure that we include content on a particular practice area. So let's complete this form. Let's go with ABC Trading. Let's choose a date here. And let's make a decision. Do we want to show the history? No, we'll exclude the history in this case, but we will show the offices because the client we're pitching to is a global client. And then for practice areas, we're going to select a particular practice area there, administrative law. All right, so when I click the continue button, the system's going to ask me for this new proposal that I've created, where do I want to save that? So I'm going to save that down just in Word format back into my SharePoint environment under Client Documents. And I'll go ahead and hit the Create button there. Now in the background, this is actually taking that document, downloading it from SharePoint, and populating it with all that client's information. And when I click on the link there, it will open up that document from SharePoint, and I can take a look at the newly created document that exists. So we'll just give it a second while that downloads from SharePoint and opens up. And here you can see that that document has been created now for ABC Trading, which is the client name that I inserted there. And in this introductory letter, all of those fields that I've specified have been included as well. In addition to that, what's also happened is that you'll see that certain sections of this document have been populated. So we have the firm overview section here that's been populated, but because we only selected the office locations on that form, only that part of the document is actually showing up there, and the firm history has been excluded from the document that's been created. We've also got practice areas, and we selected from that drop-down list the practice area administrative law, and so administrative law is the practice area that's showing up in this document now. So from a template, the salesperson has been able to rapidly create the baseline of a new proposal. Now, if I scroll a bit further down, you'll notice that there's attorney biographies in here, and later on there's also an experience area as well. And I want to make sure that the salesperson is putting the very best attorney biographies into this proposal, and I leave it up to their opinion to choose which biographies to put in there. So myself as a salesperson now would access the Chorus add-in directly from the ribbon here and start a search. And in this particular case, I'm going to search for attorney biographies. I could drill that down and search for biographies in a particular industry or practice area, but I know that I want to use Anthony Anderson's bio because he's one of our top attorneys that we have. So I type in the search information there, and that's actually going to search SharePoint now and find Anthony Anderson's bio. Before I insert that bio, I just want to take a look at how widely used that biography is amongst other proposals that have gone out. So to do that, I'll hit this info button. And that's going to give me a real quick snapshot view of Anthony Anderson there. I can have a look at the bio. But what I can also do is drill down into the usage of that bio. And I can see that in April, it's been used 17 times already. And in March, 3 times in the past. So it's clearly a popular bio. I can also have a look at who's using this. I'm clearly the most frequent user of that bio there, but many of our other salespeople also use that. And I can also take a look at which proposals or bios, or proposals rather, I've used this bio in the past here, and I can see a range of those files that have been used. So I can make a decision as to whether I want to use Anthony Anderson's bio. I'm going to choose to do that, but I'm going to insert this as what we call refreshable content, which means that we always tie this content back to the source, and if that content had to change on SharePoint, I could very easily refresh that and bring it back into this document here. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is step down into the experiences section, and I'm going to run a very similar search now, this time not for a bio, but actually for experience. And I want to look up a document of experience that has to do with banking, because this client is interested in our banking experience. And here I find, again, another document, First American Bank Limited. I could go through the information process there to see who's used it, but I just simply want to use this piece of experience in my proposal. And so I hit the insert button. And that goes and fetches that content directly from SharePoint Online, and it inserts it here into the document. And so in a few clicks, I've managed to build out a boilerplate proposal and then really customize that proposal to the experience and the bios that are most relevant to this client. Now, before I send this proposal out, there's a few things that I want to do. I want to get another piece of experience in here. So I'm going to ask one of my colleagues just to add some experience into this section here. So I'm going to go to this collaborate feature that we have in Chorus. I'm going to say create a new assignment or task, as we call it, and I'm going to call this additional experience, and I'm going to assign this to a colleague of mine, Stephanie, who knows a lot about this experience, and give her a deadline on that as well, because this proposal needs to get out by Friday. So I'm going to give her a deadline of Friday, and I'm going to save that down. And what's happening now in the background is that Stephanie's actually receiving a task in the background to come into this document using co-authoring to be able to edit that section in the document. I also want another colleague of mine just to review this introductory letter here before I send it out to the client. And so I'm going to ask that colleague of mine, please review intro letter. And I'm going to assign that to Michelle. Before I assign this to Michelle, I want to see how busy she is. And so I'm going to click on this Insight button, and that's going to give me a perspective about how many other tasks Michelle is working on when it comes to proposals and documents that are being worked on in my business. I can see she's already got one assignment overdue here. If I look at all of her assignments, she typically takes about a day to complete an assignment, but she's sitting on 3 incomplete assignments right now. And if I look over the last 12 months, I can see that April has been a particularly busy time for her. So rather than choosing Michelle, I'm going to choose David, who's somebody else in my company. And I think I'm going to rather assign that task to David. And so David's name pops in there. And again, I'm going to give him a task. Now, while that's saving down, what it means is that both Stephanie and David can independently receive a task, and they can come into this proposal, and they can then work on the proposal. And under their to-do section here, they'll get those specific tasks. They'll be able to come into those tasks and work on those tasks. And as they step through, they can use the workflow in the system to actually complete the various tasks that they have by making the necessary edits, possibly making comments as well, but when they complete it, actually marking that work as done work. When I'm happy that they've completed their work, I close all the current results off, I finalize this document, and now this document is ready to be sent out to my client. So stepping back into Outlook here, I'm happy with the document. I want to go and attach that into this email. And that actually pulls the document from SharePoint, attaches it in. And to introduce this proposal, I want to add an engagement email to this as well. So I have a template for that. I now hit the Insert button in Outlook here, and I'm able to attach that in. Again, it's going to ask me just some basic information about the matter that I'm dealing with here, about the email. And the value is $100,000, and I'm inserting that in. And in a very similar way, that's going to go fetch that content now and insert that content into my email. I've got my proposal document, and I can simply go and send that out. So in a very short amount of time, I've been able to create a proposal using a template, make sure that the right boilerplate content is inserted into that template, customize it for my client, attach it into an email, and then have the body of my email produced as well. And then I can go ahead and send that out. Now, this type of functionality is very broadly applicable. Obviously, proposals are a key thing that we can use it for, but we could go into RFP responses, we could build out PowerPoint presentations as well, and pitch decks. And obviously, as I've just shown you, we can build out emails, and we can attach to emails, all within the familiar environment of Microsoft Office, which most sales and marketing people are very familiar with. At the same time, though, all of this information is being tracked, and I can see through a Power BI dashboard exactly what content is being used, what are people searching for, and how are they using that. And with this information at my hands, I can really improve on my content, make sure that it's tagged up correctly in SharePoint Online, and ensure that it's really easy for my sales and marketing teams to find the content that they need and then to use that content.